Okay, good morning, everybody. There's the first technical hitch out of the way. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. My name is Paul Williamson, and I'm the managing director of Realia Marketing, based down in the Creative Quarter in Folkestone. Just to reaffirm that I know what I'm talking about. I am actually an expert in the field. I've got the obligatory bookshelf there, so you can see that I do know what I'm talking about. There's my autobiography there, and we have a bunch of brand experts live in the audience. So you can be assured that I know what I'm talking about. Okay, the title for this session is realizing your brand capital. And we do huge amounts of this work right across a whole spectrum of business to business brands, helping them realize their brand capital and creating a strategic position and a compelling brand proposition that drives their business. Why do people see this as being important? Well, it supports their market position, first of all, but it also should contribute and drive the strategic intent for the organization. Of course, it supports new business, but fundamentally, particularly for smaller businesses, I think it enables you to build an equity and a value in your brand that goes beyond an individual, a product, or a service. And certainly, I think that's particularly important when you come to sell your business later on. Organizations will want to buy the brand as much as they do the individuals within it, because they recognize that individual will probably exit at some point. So there's some really important fundamental reasons why you should invest in your brand capital. So I guess the first question that I'd kind of ask of you guys is to imagine yourself in a new business meeting and think about what it is that you tell them the first time that you meet them. Now, even though I'm in marketing, I hate BS, so I'm not going to call it the elevator pitch, but you need to think very clearly about what it is you tell people. Now, when we run this exercise with some clients, we had one client recently that spent 20 minutes telling us what they didn't do before they told us what they did do. Others tell us more feature-led things rather than the benefit. So we're in Folkestone, we're a marketing agency, we do colouring in. Now that's fine, but that doesn't actually get to the heart of the benefit that you bring to those clients. So think very carefully about that first pitch and the reasons why people should buy from you. I think the other thing that you need to ask yourself, as I'm asking myself right this second, is it blah? Is it just filling space? Is it creative wallpaper? Think very clearly about how succinct your message is. The other thing that is always a useful exercise, and I challenge clients to do this regularly, is to take your value proposition, your promise, the brand that you have, and put it up on a wall up against all of your competitors, and put your hand over the logo. See if you know who's who. You will find so many organizations do Me Too. They don't work hard enough at trying to find that compelling message, that compelling value proposition. So look at your competitors and see what they're saying. The other thing that you need to consider is your value proposition about you, or is it about your customer and the outcomes that you deliver? Again, so many organizations talk about we are the best. We do wonderful things. We're the most incredible marketing agency in the world. Well, that's fine, but is that actually what your clients want to hear? Or do they want to hear a benefit that says, we will take you further, we will help you succeed sooner, we will give you clarity where you don't have clarity today? In my mind, a value proposition needs to be targeted at the audience, not about massaging the ego of the organisation. The other question, I guess, there's a bunch of questions. One of the other questions, I guess, that you need to ask is, how can you differentiate yourself between yourself and your competitors? And do your customers and clients understand the difference? Do you understand the difference? And working very hard about that point of clarity so that you're clear, absolutely clear, and so are your customers about your point of difference. Fundamentally, you need to answer the what's in it for me question. So if I'm going to transition from another agency to Realia, what is it that's going to make you change? And I think very often we talk about the values that we hold or the benefits that we bring in terms of our existing customers. So you hire people and you stay with people for different reasons. You stay with people because it's comfortable, because they understand your business, because they're good guys, because you like to have a beer on a Friday. They're not the reasons to change. They're not the reasons to hire somebody. You hire somebody because they've given you something you haven't thought of yet. They've created a game changer for you. So be clear about why people stay with you, and it's really important that you hold on to those values, but also be clear about what the game changer point is. What's the imperative for somebody to change? You also need to consider the balance between the emotional reasons and the rational reasons. Very often, again, people try to focus on the rational reasons. We have 1 million clients. We are in 26 countries. That's fine, but that's only kind of part of the argument. You have to touch people on an emotional level as well. For me, BMW, now, I don't particularly like BMWs, but BMW have for years been able to balance the emotional and the rational argument really, really well. And if you think about the ultimate driving machine as a value proposition, it does touch both emotional and rational reasons to buy. From a rational perspective, it's German engineering, does 40 miles to the gallon, the chances are it's not going to break down on you. From an emotional perspective, if you choose the M3, you're going to look quite cool in your A-bands. So they do touch both of those factors very, very well. And I think that's really, really important. I don't know the age profile on this audience, but there was a band back in the day called Fun Boy 3, and they wrote the best marketing line ever. It ain't what you do, it's the way that you do it. That's what gets results. I'm not going to sing it, but it's important that you convey what you do and the benefit you bring from delivering it. That's the fundamental point. So, what does give a brand capital? Well, there's a few things. The first thing is, clearly, it needs to be desirable. It needs to be a brand that people aspire to be associated with. And when you think about the clothes that you wear, the car that you drive, the shoes that you have, excuse me, whatever choice you make about those things is driven primarily by brand and your desire to be associated with that brand. So, as an ex-rugby player, I wasn't born this ugly. Canterbury, Adidas are brands that I generally wear because they say to people I'm a rugby player, right? And the broken nose says that too. The other thing, the second consideration you need to make is around the simplicity of the value proposition. It needs to be single-minded and it needs to be understandable. Ideally, 2 words. So if we take an example of one of our clients, the Battle of Britain Memorial up at Capel, they have a wonderful offer up there, and they celebrate the few that saved us in the Battle of Britain. And of course, it's the 80th anniversary of that event this year. The value proposition we wrote for them was "You're welcome." Now that works on 2 levels. Evidently, physically, you're welcome to go to the memorial and spend some money, please. But you're also welcome for the sacrifice that those few made for us 80 years ago. So we're trying again to balance the sort of rational and the emotional reasons for you to visit the memorial. Third consideration is around personality, and actually that your brand needs to live and breathe. You have values that you always aspire to achieve, and but you also have a brand that needs to live and breathe as the environment changes. Evidently, the environment right now has meant that people need to be more agile than they've ever been before. That might not necessarily have been a value in the past. And I'm not suggesting for 1 second that anyone should pivot. If you're good at what you do, you have no reason to pivot. What you do have to do is have much deeper clarity about the benefit that you bring. Please don't pivot. Evidently, you need to have impact. You need to be able to differentiate yourself from the competition, which takes me back to the point earlier about being able to understand and your customers understanding the difference that you bring. For me, the final one is absolutely the most critical one. And that's about commitment. That's about ensuring that the customer experience that you deliver is consistent and positive and memorable. So often you see organisations making brand promises that simply don't realise themselves in the experience. A number of years ago, I worked on the British Airways account, and we spent millions and millions and millions of pounds telling everyone we were the world's favourite airline. I can guarantee you, if you go to check in at Terminal 5 and ask for help, the chances are you'll be greeted with a grump. So the brand experience and the brand promise are diametrically opposed, and it's absolutely fundamental that you ensure that brand experience is as clear as the brand promise, and it's consistently delivered. Without that, your brand has absolutely no value. So one of the little exercises, and I've included this in the briefing notes, one of the little exercises that we do often with clients is a brand wheel exercise. And that really is about driving down to what is the brand essence, what is the sort of value that you genuinely bring. And it's a wheel, and it starts from the outside. So we discover what the features of your brand are. We then try to write a benefit statement associated to that feature. Now, if that feature doesn't have a clear benefit, it's not a feature. Take it away. It's just noise. Those benefits are really important because actually they provide the foundation for all of your marketing material going forward. All of the copy that you write on your website or your brochures or your social media, whatever it might be, that's really, really the bedrock of that content. The values are important because that establishes the way that you walk and talk. It's the tone that you take. If you go back to the British Airways example, a very sort of conservative organisation, quite formal in its approach, versus Richard Branson's Virgin, which is very sort of entrepreneurial and enthusiastic. Very, very different values, and I suspect there are different people choose those different airlines for those reasons. So values establish the tone of voice, they establish the type of imagery you use to portray your offer. Quite important. And when you drill all of that down, you essentially get to the brand essence. You get to that piece of capital that you can maximise. If you can reach it yourself, great. If you need an agency to sprinkle a bit of magic dust on it, that's fine too. But that's the moment when you realise the capital that you have in your brand. The other thing I think is really, really fundamental actually is recognising what you don't do. Very often organisations, particularly service-led organisations, find it very difficult to say no. They want to please their clients, they're pleasers, that's why they're in a service business, and particularly if it's your business, you say no, you lose revenue, or perceptually you upset a client. But being quite clear about what you're good at and being equally clear about what you're not so good at is really important. The worst thing you can do is offer a service that you don't believe you can deliver well. You let the client down, and it essentially destroys the brand equity that you have in the things that you are good at. So I call it sort of a corridor of acceptability, really. You've got your core activity in the middle of it that you know you're absolutely brilliant at, and then you have some corridors of opportunity, if you like. So if you take the marketing example, we do branding well. That should enable us to be able to do PR and social media well. What it doesn't enable us to do is offer you a quote for double glazing because we don't understand that business. So be clear about what you're capable of doing, be clear about what you're excellent at, and understand perhaps the product extensions, the integrations that you can make. But please think very carefully about what you can't do because it will affect your brand if you undertake it and deliver it badly. Final thing in all of this, I guess, is about understanding your value and being able to not put a price on this, but put a lifetime value on the benefit that you bring. And that really is at the crux of all of this, right? If you're going to develop a brand with equity, then you need to be able to charge the appropriate kind of rate for it. And, you know, I've struggled with that in the past. I've always wanted the work, and so you try and do the right thing in terms of your pricing. But in some ways, it actually does you no service at all. One of my favourite analogies is around the guy who puts his settee on his front lawn and says and puts a sign on it saying free to collect. The next morning, no one's collected it. He then puts a sign on it saying for sale, £500. Someone steals it. It's having that, it's understanding the value that you bring, because that then embeds deeply in the minds of your customers that you have a value and you're prepared to respect that value, and they should respect that value too. So how do we sort of pull all of this together? Well, I thought I'd use the Realia example. And it does come back to those sort of 4 questions that we talked about in all of the promotion around what do we do, who do we do it for, how do we do it, and fundamentally what are the outcomes that we deliver. So for us, what do? Well, we deliver complex messages clearly. The overwhelming majority of our clients are in very technical B2B environments like pharmaceutical, supply to insurance and construction. And very often those organisations tend to want to wrap their offer in a huge amount of complexity. They're like an SEO agency, they kind of have to, blind you with science when actually it just seems pretty obvious. So taking those complex messages and helping people to understand them more clearly and understand them better across all kinds of stakeholder groups is what we do. That's the internal audience as well as the external audience. And for that, those larger organisations that might be watching this, don't forget the internal audience. They are fundamental. Go back to the BA example. They're fundamental in ensuring that your brand experience is carried through with your brand promise. How do we do it? Well, we call it creative intelligence because we're a marketing agency, so we'd have to come up with something like that, wouldn't we? But essentially, it's about taking a methodology that we've created and overlaying our experience and expertise in order to deliver clients creative intelligence. And what are the outcomes that are delivered from that? Well, we like to think we're efficient, we like to think we're effective, we have experience, and when you wrap all of that up, you create a value that enables clients to achieve their ambitions. So it's a very kind of structured way of thinking, actually. You go through that methodology and then you sprinkle the creative magic dust that makes it compelling for people. Always think about the emotional, always think about the rational. Just a final thought on how we sort of communicate this. Certainly right now we know that cash is tight for a lot of people. I'm afraid to say that I believe cash is going to get tighter because very little has been sold over the course of the last 3 months, which means cash flow in the next 3 months is going to be even tougher. And many people are trying to ride that out by using free for channels like social media. That's fine, but you need to make sure that you have a truly compelling message on that media because everybody's doing the same thing. So again, be clear about what your proposition is, be clear about defining the value of that proposition. And then how do you sort of capture that interest in order to attract people to talk to you? And then activate the desire, be excited about it, be passionate about what you do, demonstrate that passion, demonstrate those values, because that will pull people through from an emotional perspective. And then it's about converting the opportunity, which we all recognise is a challenge. But in terms of the overall brand equity, you need to invest some time and some effort and some thought into it. Don't start any conversation with because they don't. You need to know, and you need to convey it with excitement and passion and the belief that you have in your business. That's me done. 18 people have been watching this. Thank you all very much. I hope it was useful. Any questions, post them on the Facebook page or drop me an email and I'll do what I can to help. Thank you to Creative Foundation Creative Folkestone for inviting me onto this. Hope it's been worthwhile and you all stay safe. Take care.